Welcome to our Made for More podcast. You're here for our Let's Talk series. This is where we get in a lot of different people and hear about their journeys and what it's been like for them with mental ill health. We're going to cover topics such as anorexia, depression, self-image, and OCD. Please be advised that in these topics, they could be sensitive to some people and could be triggering. If this is you, feel free to skip to the next podcast. We have lots of resources on our support page for you, and we have linked below specific organisations where you can go if you need extra support. Hi everyone, welcome to our next episode in the series of Let's Talk, and today we're with Richard Martin.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
We're delighted to have you here. Richard is an absolute bundle of joy and I can't wait for you to hear from him. He is going to share today, Let's Talk Depression. Richard, you have had a really significant journey with depression, but actually how you have journeyed that, how you talk so openly about it, how you help those around you with it is honestly inspiring, and just your vulnerability in the whole process. So I would just wonder today if you would just share a little bit of your story for a lot of people who are listening and are maybe struggling as well. First of all, just kick us off with maybe so this isn't a medical podcast at all. This is just us having a discussion. We are going to put things out there. If you are struggling, we're going to put help out there for you. We have a support page, but there's a lot of organizations that can help you as well. So if you're really struggling, please speak to your GP. Don't just listen to this podcast. Neither of us are doctors, so please don't take anything that we say. But Richard, from your own opinion in your life and your walk with depression, how would you define it? What would you think that is? How has it kind of played out in your life?
Yeah, that's good. I suppose I looked up a definition because I didn't want to just go off my journey, and it said depression.
Looking it up is always good.
It's always a good shout. Depression is a low mood that lasts for weeks or months that affect your daily life. I think for me, what depression looks like for me and my symptoms are maybe a little bit different to others. And I have this background lowness that is around there most of the time. Yeah. But I go through maybe on a yearly basis, maybe 2 to 3 deep pockets of depression that last a few weeks. And it's in those deep pockets of depression that I would say that I collapse inwardsly. I kind of lose myself. I can no longer conjure my own personality. And within that, I developed this quite profound lowness that kind of debilitates me from doing daily things. Like for an example, if I was upstairs and I wanted a slice of toast, I would think to myself, well, I'd have to walk downstairs. I would then have to open the bread cupboard. I would then have to put a slice of bread into the toaster. And then when it's in the toaster, I'd have to wait. And then I'd have to butter the toast.
So it all seems heavy.
And then I'd have to chew it. And it's funny, in that moment, it also seems ridiculous because in that moment, I'm like, ordinary people can do this. But in that moment, I'm like, I just don't have the energy to do it. Yeah. Everything just seems like such hard work. Yeah. So yeah, it kind of debilitates me to an extent. And I find it hard to just do normal things that other people do. My concentration really deteriorates. My depression comes around in like waves, I think. And if you ever have looked at the ocean, sometimes there's these baby waves that just kind of like start to ripple out quite easily. But other times, they're bigger than you expect. Like I sometimes think I've learned from riding the wave of depression that sometimes, just like a professional surfer, I underestimate the wave. Wow. And I slip and I fall. And it's in those moments that I need my support network to be my lifeguard and come in and get me from drowning in those big waves.
Wow, what language and what imagery actually to your story. That's so powerful. That like actually those ripples and the waves, they're always there. Those ripples, but then the big tide would come in, and you use the word ridiculous to describe, this sounds ridiculous that I can't go down and get a slice of toast. But I would just say I don't think it's ridiculous at all. In that moment that you're struggling, that's your truth, is that you can't do that you're tired, that it's heavy, and in the moment that's what's real to you. So I don't think it's ridiculous at all. Actually, I think it's really powerful to be able to share that, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people listening who have also been in that moment feeling, why am I thinking like this? This is so normal. Everyone can go down and get a slice of toast. But it's good to be honest in yourself and just say,
Yeah.
this moment I can't. So as you just said, I get my support network. What would your support network look like?
Yeah, I suppose my support network, I've struggled with depression nearly for 8 years, and I've kind of built these support networks
Yeah.
up over years.
It's brilliant.
Whether that's mentors or good friends or family, I've kind of each play a role in it. And there's
Yes.
not one specific person. There's maybe a specific person that I go to when I'm feeling incredibly anxious or incredibly low, but there's not one specific person that I go to all the time. They all have their role to play, whether
Oh,
that's
that's brilliant.
someone who I meet up with on a monthly basis for a coffee, or maybe it's just someone that I go down who lives close by, and we just hang out and watch silly things on YouTube, whatever it may be. They all kind of play their role in
Yeah.
it. But it's funny going back just a step. Whenever we said about everyone's symptoms is nearly different in depression, I think there is one symptom that you just picked up on that nearly everyone with depression has, and that's tiredness. I think they're all
Yeah.
very tired.
Yeah.
And we use imagery, like we just said about surfer, to kind of explain our language. Sometimes I think, just like love, we use metaphors to describe depression because we don't really know how to tangibly put words to our
Yeah.
pain.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like if I was to use a metaphor, it would be that it's like I fed this stray dog years ago and now it won't leave me alone and it keeps following me everywhere. But sometimes, just like a stray dog, you're looking in front and you kind of forget that it's there.
Yeah.
But it kind of like, you do know it is always there.
Yeah. It's always kind of lingering.
And I think that's the hardest part about it is sometimes you feel like you're getting healthier, but then you get a setback. And I think that's one of the hard truths that I've really come to learn with struggling with mental health is that healing isn't linear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it gives us a skewed perspective on things whenever we feel like we're going back in times when we start to develop. But I would say support network has been very much key.
And that's up to you to put in place. You know,
Yeah.
you have put that in place. You've struggled with this for 8 years, but equally people struggle for a lot longer and never put a support network in place. So that is something that I can hear from you is really, really key and actually really vital.
And the key in those relationships, or the key ingredients, I would say, is openness and vulnerability. People can't support you if they don't know what's going on.
Absolutely.
So we should not assume that they know what's going on. Sometimes I feel like we have expectations for people up here, but our reality is here.
Yeah.
And in between is like fertile ground for our own disappointment.
Wow.
But it is important that whenever we are in those relationships that we are sharing, because those relationships will get deeper.
Absolutely.
But they'll also play a key role in your healing.
Yeah. And people aren't mind readers. And that is, and as much as it's painful and as much inside as we might think, I shouldn't have to tell them, they're my friend, they should know. They don't know. And that deep pain that you're feeling, it's so hard to, I know, communicate. But actually, whenever you do, you see the powerfulness in community, you see the powerfulness in coming together and the help that it can actually bring and be to you. So I just wondered if you'd share a couple of defining moments within your depression journey.
Yeah, I think one real defining moment was in my undergraduate up in Korea. I think I had been struggling with depression for so long, but I wasn't able to put words to it. I remember the first time a GP had told me that the symptoms I was showing was depression. I remember correcting her and I goes, "No, I think you're wrong." There was a lot of denial for a long time, and I remember the first time that a really close friend of mine set me down and said that there is something wrong, and that was quite a defining moment for me in my process, because I think the first step is recognition.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't get ingredients for a cake in Tesco's if you don't know what the ingredients of the cake is or what the cake is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good analogy, but let's go with it. I also think too, another defining moment was just recently back in September. I was flying home from Canada. I'd spent a summer at Muskoka Woods, and I was coming home. I was just, the word to describe was I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
I was in dire need of some sort of peace.
Yeah,
I feel like
absolutely.
I had been at war with peace for so long. And I remember that on the journey home that it kind of clicked in that moment that the depression was controlling me. I was not controlling the depression. And that realization, I just remember crying for so long on that plane journey home. And I remember that, I suppose before this, I've never really had a fight to get healthier.
Yeah.
And let me explain that a wee bit more. I've always been trying to manage it and trying to get better. But I've never had a fight because I've just been trying to get through.
Yeah.
Survival. And it wasn't until I suppose I came home that I really developed this fight, and I started integrating what I'd call, I sort of started really having this fight to get healthier, really, and integrating things into my life to try and make that happen. It's really nice having a thought to get healthier, but you need to put things in place.
Absolutely.
So I started doing things. I started doing running and integrating running into my life, even whenever I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And doing that a few times a week. Journal.
Because you notice that makes you feel.
That makes a difference. Journaling.
Brilliant.
I suppose I have set times in a week where I meet up with people who are really important to me. I've learned the art of saying no.
Wow.
And the art of slowing down.
That's powerful, especially linked to your exhaustion, because you've realized that exhaustion is a big trigger for you.
Exactly.
Exhaustion, if you get into that space, can become a real place where you lose your peace. So actually the identification of that and then you making action on the other side of that, it's brilliant.
Exactly. And a part of that, I suppose, I had uncomfortable tensions in my life, I would describe. I never liked time alone.
Okay.
I never really enjoyed I always needed to have something on, whether that's a podcast or something. I was never able to take a few moments out. I had all these different tensions. I'll not go into them all because it's a long list, but I needed to work on them. I don't entirely know how healthy it is for a 24-year-old to not be able to spend time by themselves. Because in my depression, my head fills with lies and that becomes quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I started really working out. I'm not a very good sleeper. I need to fix that as well. I need to eat a little bit better. Still working on that one. But all these little things I needed to work on. So, for example, I drive with AirPods on because I just always need some music or something playing. So I've started driving without AirPods and things like that, and trying to listen to myself.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you're listening to this, you're probably and you're struggling with depression, you're probably thinking, I'm exhausted. That seems very overwhelming to implement all that.
Yeah.
But I was the exact same. And what I did was I implemented each one of these things on a fortnightly period.
That's so helpful.
So each fortnight I would bring in a new, I suppose, mechanism to try and get healthier.
Wow.
And then by a few months, by December, I really did start to see the side effects. And what I would say is, in the fight to get healthier, you wouldn't put a jogger into a marathon. You'd only put a runner into a marathon. So you need to take it very slowly and kind of like running. Maybe you start off with 2K, maybe 3K, then 4K, then 5K, and whatever it is. And then you work on your time.
Richard.
You kind of need to do that with getting healthier. You need to do it very slowly, and don't, kind of like running. My advice is for running. I'm not a very big runner, so I don't feel that qualified to give advice. Is not to work on time until you've got the distance yet.
Yes.
So I think too, in your journey of healing, remove time from it. Take out those expectations of time frame.
Yeah.
And
just
aspects
show
of that.
up.
Yeah.
Just implement something. Because
Exactly.
if you implement something, you're one step further than you were yesterday.
Exactly.
And I think that is so key. Don't try and put all these things in place at once, because you see an end goal where you would love to be. However, getting there can seem completely unachievable. But actually in small steps, small tiny things that you do, you said you come home from Muskoka in September's time, by December you'd seen real change. And actually what we are doing at the moment within Made for More, it was and we've done this, like, we as a team, we actually did a 7-day mental health challenge online, but as a team we're doing 3 things a day. We feed our physical body 3 times a day, well, most people 3 meals a day. And very quickly, I don't know about you, but if I don't eat breakfast if I don't eat lunch, I get really hangry. I can't concentrate. I'm so tired. I just need to like physically feed my body. But why do we go so long without feeding our mental bodies? We just, like, without feeding our minds, we just leave them to the side and we go weeks without tending to them and then wonder why we're at this place of burnout. So actually what as a team we're doing is, what 3 things are you doing within the day to just as like the exact same things that you're saying that you do whenever you're struggling, but actually what you're doing is so right because you put these things in place before you're struggling. So actually you start to do so. Every morning I listen to this podcast called The Daily Pep, which is something that I do. In the afternoon, I'll do a breathing exercise. And in the evening, I just take some time in silence. And they're not long. I mean, I have a 1.5-year-old, so it's not long. But actually what it is, it's just for my mind to just say, I recognize this is hard. I recognize that I'm actually a little bit stressed right now. But I build a little bit of resilience by taking a pause and being kind to myself and identifying that I have needs, identifying myself and then moving on. So what you're saying is so key, like actually putting those things in place before you're at a burnout stage or you're at exhausted stage, you're at that language. And I think that'll be helpful. But Richard, thank you so much for being here today and sharing with us how vulnerable you share is. I mean, it's just overwhelming. The language that you put to depression, the analogies that you put on it are just, I mean, so helpful. And I hope that if you are struggling, that you can probably see part of yourself in Richard's story. And I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for sharing it. And if you are struggling, we're putting up links to people who can help you to support. But we hope that by listening to Richard's story just gave you a little bit of hope. That's what this is. So contact your GP if you are struggling. But this is just a space of hope. People share stories who Richard's not sitting here saying that he's got everything together. Actually, you're saying this is a constant struggle with you, but you're willing to invite people into your story. You're willing to invite people who support you regularly in your story, but also you're willing to invite us in to watch this journey and to go along. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in to our Made for More podcast on our Let's Talk series. We hope you enjoyed today and we hope you got a lot out of it. Please let us know what you think. We love hearing from you. Just a reminder that this is not a medical podcast. So if you're struggling with mental ill health, please contact your GP or use one of our links below for extra support.